Signs, signs everywhere, sign. It struck me, a few people that I know on here, on the net, which is the only place I know anybody anymore. I live completely alone. I'm not at all well, and I never leave here, or even go outside much. That is what it is. Squirrel. But it struck me that I have a couple of young women that I know. I say no, I'm not familiar with. It's really obvious, and I'm not anti-drug at all. Drugs played a big part, especially weed in my life. And although I around 25, I quit smoking weed, but a couple of things struck me. I mean, the dangerous thing about weed, and the messed up thing about it, is that, and all drugs really, I mean, you sort of you start to see your perceptions alter, and you start to see the fabric of reality differently, and everything sort of takes on this magic sheen and magic glow. And this isn't an anti-drug rant or anything. It's just sort of a FWIW for what it's worth, or a I'm just saying kind of deal. But it makes you you begin to see everything as sort of have all these magical connotations attached to it, and it puts you in sort of an observer position in the universe. I mean, so instead of like becoming like an epic musician that makes these magical epic creations, you become an observer of those things. And it's like when you're listening to music stoned, it's easy to entertain almost anyone who's stoned. Everything seems like it's just so sublime, but because their perceptions are altered, everything seems magic. So my thoughts on that are, I've spent quite a few years of my life, and especially my early years, smoking weed, and even moved across the country to get to a point where I could I once traveled on a bus nearly 3,000 miles in really uncomfortable conditions, to live in uncomfortable conditions. I was so dedicated to weed. I thought it was the answer to everything, and I had a big brown bag of seeds with me. That's all I had. The city I was at the time, I had ran out of weed, and I couldn't afford it, and I was sort of at a lull in my life, and so I changed my entire life to that's nice. That was very sort of futuristic in that arc, but it messed my conception of reality up. Everything sort of felt magical, and I was just so determined, absolutely determined. And I've seen this in a couple of people I know on the net. One young woman, under the guise of sort of using weed as medicine, and I understand that. I've been ill for a long time, and but she really was just bound and determined to deny that she was addicted, and that's okay if she is, but it's always helpful to sort of call a thing, call a spade a spade. And that way, once you know what something is, you can look at it clearly and effectively and deal with it, and understand it. instead of denying that it's, denying that there is air here, calling it air and figuring out its components is handier as a scientist. You'll find that handy. But she had really, it was obvious she's addicted to weed. And as far as that, it's not physically, kind of physically, but more, in my travels, I went through a place called Los Encinas Hospital in Los Angeles. It's a wonderful grounds in Pasadena, right next to Hollywood. It's, a few miles away. And all the movie stars and rock stars go there. It's the best you can get. I've been there like probably 15 times. Not always for a lot for depression and a lot for sort of trying to learn how to take morphine every day and not, because I have a chronic and what I now understand is a sort of a terminal health condition that's very painful. I'm in a lot of pain right now, but I digressed a lot there. People using drugs that also have recreational effects and side effects. This young woman obviously had changed her entire life to go live somewhere and smoke weed in a group of people, community of people who smoke weed. She's a weed activist. She denies she's an addict. Well, she is. At this hospital, Dr. Drew happens to practice there, and I've gone as a physicist and scientist, and so myself way beyond. He's a good communicator, and in science, only the scientists who are good at communicating become famous. A lot of scientists are probably kick the ass off Newton or whoever, but he was the best at communicating his thoughts, Galileo, etc. But Drew's really good at communicating. He says weed is instantly addictive, and that was my experience with it. After the first time, I wanted to live in this altered reality, and I really thought that anybody who didn't understand that I now, from the first time I smoked it, I thought anybody who did not get the fact that I now understood magic existed in the world, and that there was this this whole other dimension that ordinary normal fuddy-duddies couldn't see. I really thought I was very clever. That part of that is the way drugs work is they sort of overly activate your super ego. You have three components of yourself: the id, the ego, and the super ego. And that's from my own experience, not just because certain psychologists have written that. It sort of overactivates your ego, so you think you know a lot of things that other people don't know. And my point is that if you can reach a certain kind of ability to find the magic in everyday things, and some things will appear as magic, music, the universe. Sometimes you see something, things happen in a series of events that are absolutely sublime. If you can sort of learn to make those things, or pick them out, or even make them happen in music or art, it's all an illusion, really. There is really no invisible magic. That's sort of where I take issue with religion, because anything that can't be explained, it's like, it's invisible magic, As a person who really has delved into the fabric of reality, I like to understand why things are actually happening, how the universe actually functions. And some concepts will seem, in physics, especially when you get into advanced physics, it will seem like there's magic all around. But there's perfectly reasonable explanations for, everything. That's the way the universe is created. If there is a God, and if he is anything, he's a common sense dude. just plain old common sense, by people assigning sort of all these false values to equations, false conclusions to ideas or even lies. It's just that's the problem with philosophy and religion. Yeah, it was another young woman was in college for physics and taking a full class load and doing well, and I hadn't heard from her in a couple of years, so I wrote her. The last time I met her in rehab, for God's sake. She had been arrested for assault and other stuff, and she's a wonderful young woman. I'm sure it was all just bullshit. She got in a shoving match with some other teenage girl, and assault, which is complete stupidity. But she was drunk at the time, and so her parents, who have some means, shoved her into to rehab. I met her there, and so she got out of rehab, got herself together, went into college, and that was a couple of years ago. Well, I send her every year. I'll send her an email because she wants to study physics, and she's a neat girl, and I keep in loose touch with her. And anyway, I sent her letters. How's it going? And she sent me back one that said, well, I'm no longer clean and sober, and I'm no longer in college, I'm no longer clean and sober, and in fact, it's 3 o'clock in the morning right now, and pretty much what she was saying, I'm laying here rolling a fatty, smoking it, just feeling so wonderful about everything. And I was like, dude, her parents got pissed and cut her off from her education fund because she wouldn't sober up. She wanted to smoke pot, and her parents didn't want her to, which, well, I've been there. But it was so obvious to me with this stark contrast of last time she was in college, and this is a person who, I met in treatment for addiction. I was actually there for treatment of depression and chronic pain, but for reasons I've gone into, a lot of times you'll end up in rehabs when you have a lot of other problems because of insurance, what insurance will pay for and not. And anyway, so yeah, there she was in college. Things were going great. Now she's not, and she's laying in bed at 3 in the morning. And on her Facebook page, I can see she's partying like crazy with all her friends and running wild in the streets, going nowhere in life, dropped out of college, smoking weed. Her parents cut her off. She's got to work some crappy job now. It's so obvious. It's like, dude, you're an addict. You're a drug addict. And I loved drugs, but, once again, the thing about it is, instead of becoming a legend or making magical, physics equations and apparati or magical art that, it makes you into an observer of everything seems magical. And so it changes things. So, my thought would be find ways that naturally occur in nature. And I was one of those people for a long time. I was like, oh man, pot is a gift from God, so I understand that, but all of that. But if you find naturally occurring things, maybe it's really reaching a high level of proficiency on an instrument or painting or drawing, and then music, and combining all those things in videos to where they have a sublime effect on people. Magic is magic no matter how you derive it, but the problem on that is that if you see everything as magic, which I did, I was so stoned up until I was about 25, then I got clean and sober. And a lot, like, a few years after 21 years of sobriety, I became addicted because of medical treatment to prescription drugs. And my thought on that, anybody who uses narcotics for pain relief, you're definitely going to be chemically dependent, where you have to have that drug every day from the very beginning, within a week, within 10 days, really 14 days technically, of daily use of narcotics. You're definitely going to be chemically dependent, and then later you will become a drug addict from the brunt of using these things every day. What I found in chronic pain, yeah, they help. Morphine, OxyContin, it's a plague, but they also they don't help as much. You become used to them, accustomed to them, then they don't help as much. Then you have the pain, and now you're addicted to this drug. My studies, and that's no small number of years of study with narcotics in the treatment of chronic pain, is that they cannot play any use at all. And it would be neat with all of these drugs to, from pot to the narcotics, to be able to just, well, hey, I feel like it's a morphine day today. Seems cool. I'll just smoke a J and take some morphine and chill. But the problem with that is that, especially for certain types of people, and it's my belief, everyone can be turned into, well, definitely with narcotics, be turned into a physical addict. But the next thing you know, it's 10 years later, and that's all you've done. And so you've achieved and accomplished nothing. You've made no myths or legends. You've written no myths or legends. And you've seen everything that's myth and legend. For me, now that I wake up and I see, and I'll be 50 soon, and I love the classic Zeppelin, Floyd, and all these people. But now that I know how to make and have worked at the highest levels in the recording industry, now that I know how to make these epic recordings, I can see that they had some things to offer, and they were amazing, but there was nothing epic or mythic about it. Really being stoned, and millions of young people in that era being stoned, it sort of made things seem epic and mythic. But it's easy for me to now duplicate any of these bands, anybody, pretty much, and that is what it is. But yeah, for me, it really what can you say about that type of thing? It's sort of a self-reinforcing delusion. And all these drugs, by the way, when we now know that they all give you a dopamine rush of a chemical in your brain, and a dopamine, that they all boil down to a super sugar compound that then stimulates dopamine, and that once you've sort of forced that drug through these receptors a lot, they need that equal dose every time or more to get the same effect. So it's the law of diminishing returns. It's like it sounds the inverse square law, anyway, yeah, there are things that do appear sublime and feel magical all around us all the time. Drugs make it seem like those things and they are constantly happening. Drugs amplify those things, but if you can pick those things out without the drugs, then they're real and they're powerful. and magical, then nothing is epic and magical. And there's a lot of ego involved with it when you feel sort of superior to everyone and everything around because through drugs you found this new understanding. You've unlocked the keys to the universe. Well, the truth is, you can boil that all down to cliche, where the people around you just go, oh, he's stoned, he's an alcoholic, or he's stoned, or he's a drug addict. Of course, it's a no-brainer. But the people who are those things, their perceptions are so altered, they don't even realize it, that they've become like a giant cliche, you know. I'm sure, and now that I look back, you know, I see at times in my life I was just this walking cliche that thought he was like, you know, hugely insightful. I was just stoned, you know. So, I guess the equation is that it was just weird to see these two young women. One traveled across country so she could live and get stoned in a safe environment under the guise of using it as medical care. And maybe that's true, but there's other things she could do. She's really a drug addict, and that's just the long and short of it, and in complete denial. I guess the denial is what struck me. It's so obvious looking from the outside and having been through an identical thing, that both of these young women, and then my friend Jordan, who fell so far in a year and cannot see it, you know, weed is the answer for everything. She smokes it all the time, every day now, and dropped out of college, no longer talks to her parents because of the weed. So anyway, the thought that, to me, looking in, it was so cliche, both of these people, and so I understand that sense of power, that sense of ego, and that sense of like, I'm so very special because I understand the universe in ways other people don't through drugs. And it's really just the whole, oh, groovy baby thing, you know. It's like, dude, wake up. I do believe there is no invisible magic that's inexplicable around us. Well, maybe inexplicable at this point in history, but there is magic all around us, and better said, things that will appear magic because of the laws of physics and the way the universe functions. So, you know, things that, I mean, what's the difference if you perceive that your hand is on fire and it 100% perception of the pain, the smell of burning flesh, or your hand being on fire? The two things are identical. I think the difference is that one of those experiences is only the perception of your hand being on fire, and the other one is the actual event of your hand being on fire. Those are vastly different. I'm really digressing into philosophy here, but it's better to understand the universe functioning as you were meant to by nature, and finding the magic on your own, and being able to even create the illusion of magic with music and art, than it is to just blanket everything with some bullshit drug and sort of be in a delusion that you yourself, you know, your ego will tell you yourself are like command the universe, and you yourself are magical, and you know, you're creating these amazing it's epic. It's just not true. You're only fooling yourself, and I've done that. So but the drag of it is you wake up, you know, years and years later after a long bout with addiction, and you realize it was just this kind of sad cliche. There was nothing, noise pollution. You know, after a long bout with addiction and using pot a lot in my early life, when you're clear-headed, you wake up, centuries. That's a nice call. I like that. I like the sound that bird makes, but you wake up later and you realize, I was nothing but a walking cliche of drug addiction, and that held me. That held me back from actually, instead of being a participant in the universe and in life and making the myths, I was reduced to being an observer because I thought everything was so mystical. Birds. Birds are actually closely, they're flying dinosaurs, basically. The dinosaurs didn't go extinct, they just evolved or devolved, evolved into birds. What a world we live in.
We're sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again. This is a recording.